Let me start the machine here. Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. It's October 8, 2017. We saw this week in the news. I saw it online. I didn't think anybody would pick it up. But it seems that over in Great Britain, there was a fella who got onto a train, and all he did was to begin reciting Bible verses. He had a Bible apparently, and he started reading these Bible verses. Now, it was a little extreme. He was reading or reciting verses about homosexuality, about sex outside of marriage, and using Bible terms, abomination, really kind of a heavy-duty thing, letting people know that these things were sinful. Well, in response to that, people on the train became very frightened, and they began getting off the train. He's just reading Bible verses. One woman went up to a guard on the platform to say the man had a bomb and was going to kill everybody. And of course the guard then went on the train to escort this man off. They searched his bag. All they found were books and a bottle of water. Didn't have anything else going on. Why is it in Great Britain, quoting Bible verses on a train, they were heavy? Why would it create that reaction? Well, in my view, one of the reasons is that Europe, and Great Britain being part of it, has been overwhelmed with Muslims, radicalized and others. And these people do this sort of thing. They have these words that they say, and they quote from their prophet, and this, that, and the other, and the next thing you know, they're cutting your head off, or, burning something down. Most Brits don't go to church, so they really don't know the difference between Islam and Christianity, especially when somebody gets on a train and starts doing this crazy stuff, which is exactly what they see from Islam and perhaps from other non-Christian religions. Your religious words, your religious books and that sort of thing become something that frightens them. Less than 10% of Brits go to church. Watch Great Britain. They're about 50 years ahead of us when it comes to this sort of thing. It was in the second half of the 19th century, the 1800s, when Christianity was on the rise in Great Britain and Europe. And much of what they were doing came over here in the early 20th century. Bible versions and some of the other things. I mean, there was a great resurgence and so forth. But there was also an element of liberalism in and amongst the Europe and Britain and all the rest of it. It was basically communism, but it was liberalism in the broadest sense of the word. And Great Britain went liberal before we did. We started liberalism in the 1920s and 30s. They had already gotten there by the turn of the century. So they kind of are working ahead of us. Watch Great Britain and their social structure and the way they think and that sort of thing about God and about the Bible and about morality and all the rest of it. And you'll start to get some idea how it's going to be over here if it isn't there that way already. At Tufts University in Boston, here in the United States, Jewish college students are returning after their summer break, and they are running into swastikas on campus. and anti-Israel activity, not just on the campuses, but around the country. The signs of hostility toward Jewishness and their religion, we'll put it that way, is growing, and it starts usually on college campuses and so forth. The latest incidents coincide with a new campaign by pro-Palestinian activists to portray Israelis as white supremacists. They're linking up the Jewish state and the white supremacist activity that is here in these United States and other places as well. They have even provided a disorientation guide. This comes from the more militant students, accusing Israel of white supremacy. Why? Well, because they don't want the Arabs to take over their country. They were granted this space. They fought a war they didn't start, and they now have their country. And they want people who are not Jewish to live someplace else. So that's discrimination. And it's discrimination, apparently, white supremacy type. Well, over here we understand it in terms of people who have darker skin. But over there it's the same kind of thing. Jews are a minority in every country of the world. They always have been. Israel is the exception, but only in the last 70 years. Israel and Jews in general have no desire to limit other people's religious expression. It isn't, we have ours and ours is the only one and you can't. It's, leave us alone. We have ours. You have yours. Why can't you be happy? We understand these things in terms of phrases, words like apartheid, words like anti-Semitism, words like Kristallnacht. There's a reason why Jews are hated around the world and why Muslims are largely protected. And it's a Bible reason. Because the reality is, logic says it ought to be the other way. Muslims are slave traders. Always have been. Still are. The slaves that came to the United States were sold by Muslims in Africa. They sold a lot more to Europe than they sold this way. We got a very small percentage. Most that came west were down in the Caribbean and South America. We got a very small percentage of all that was going on. But even after Great Britain outlawed slavery or discrimination, and even after we have outlawed it here, it exists in the world today. And it, like always, it has been the Arabs, the Islamics who have done this. Our own president stood in the doorway in, what would it be called, West Africa, at a slave place, whatever they call it, auction, whatever. He stood in the doorway. They took this picture. Oh, it was a moving picture. And the idea was that his ancestors suffered terribly. But his ancestors suffered terribly at the hands of Muslims, of Islam. White people over here bought them. White Britishers had ships, and they got wealthy shipping them around. Nobody's innocent here. But why do we rewrite history? To protect Islam. It's amazing. There's another little article that popped up this week that I wanted to share with you. Do you watch The View? You say, no, I don't really watch The View. It's a woman's thing. I don't watch it, you know. It comes up in the news every once in a while because these women get in and they attack anybody that don't believe what they believe. And, you know, it's fun. It's kind of like guerrilla talk show or something. John MacArthur was on The View. I don't know if it got aired on regular TV. It's being discussed in an article as something that happened internally, an internal test production. Let me read to you what happened and how this all worked out. The article says, in a move designed to finally give an on-air voice to the nation's conservative Christians, producers of the popular morning talk show called The View confirmed just last Monday the addition of preacher and author John MacArthur to the show. It's going to be on The View regularly, not perhaps every day, but a regular stint on The View. In internal footage, MacArthur reportedly held his own against the flurry of conversation coming from the other co-hosts. MacArthur dryly responding to his fellow cast members' arguments with a barrage of Bible verses and blunt truths from the Word of God. Wrong, MacArthur said flatly, as Joy Behar began a rant in support of abortion. Abortion is an abomination, and you will be accountable to your Creator one day for your explicit support of the murdering of the unborn. End of quote. He went on to say, because of these things, the wrath of God is being revealed against the earth. And he said all of this calmly before taking a sip of coffee, while the stunned co-hosts looked on in horror. Wish you could have been there. In one heated debate over same-sex marriage, MacArthur simply looked at the camera and smirked, allowing the left-leaning hosts to simply self-implode on what he called the obvious inconsistency of their own argumentation. MacArthur even reportedly let his emotions get the best of him during a discussion on transgender bathrooms in public schools, raising an eyebrow for the first time during the taping, an outburst for which he later apologized. MacArthur has rated very highly among our demographic, the producers said, for his calm, stoic demeanor and his ability to put the rest of the cast in their place at long last. One producer says we look forward to his valuable input over the coming season. I think I'm going to become a consumer of The View. If I ever know when it's on, and I ever know when MacArthur's going to be on the panel, it ought to be rich.